Shalom. Let's start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Ruach HaKodesh. Double honors to the apostles and elders, great millstones. Salutations to all for that that's pushing this truth across four corners of the earth and all fair truth and sincerity. This I'm gonna want to buy back in that city. I was going to real quick. This YouTube video, it's 2 weeks old, but still going to about it says America is now building humanoid AI robot soldiers for war. I looked at looking at it, just going to about these robots, they building these robots, for the future war, but I say with this though, man, like I say, it's just it's gonna lead up to like I say, these so-called white people, Esau, Edomite devils, they're gonna use these robots, to come at, to get at people that, resist against their new world order agenda. They're gonna use this on the American people as well. These robots, especially so-called Negro, Latino natives, which are Israelites, and like I said, and also like World War III too, is gonna be a part of it as well, but of that, so like I said, them drones as well, so but hey, these are the times, that's ahead, the times ahead for this place America, Babylon the Great world, in this world gonna be, a lot of chaos, death, and destruction, man. It's gonna come by way, like I said, World War III. These robots, robot soldiers that these so-called white people, Edomite devils are, building, preparing them, these robots, for war, to fight, and so forth, so I'm gonna play this video. So it's like 13 minutes long. I'm gonna play it.
Alright, so while every other robotics company on the planet is trying to teach humanoids how to fold your laundry or hand you a coffee, one American startup just looked at all of that and said, nah, we're going to arm ours. And I'm not exaggerating, I'm not clickbaiting you. The CEO literally said on the record that they're strapping lethal capabilities onto their humanoid robots. Soon. And the person helping steer this whole thing? Eric Trump, the president's son. This is real. This is happening right now. And once you see the full picture of what's going on globally, it gets...
Yeah, you see who want to, push this, get this going is President Trump's son, Eric Trump, so play the rest of it.
Even crazier. So let's talk about it. The company is called Foundation Future Industries, and their CEO is a guy named Sankait Pathak. Now, Pathak isn't dancing around the mission here. When he was asked about it, he said, quote, "We have some kinetic things we're exploring. Kinetic things. That's defense industry speak for weapons systems." And he's not talking about some 10-year roadmap either. He says they'll probably unveil something within the next couple of months. Their robot is called the Phantom MK1, and beyond straight-up combat, the company is pitching it for logistics, reconnaissance, and inspection work. But make no mistake, the headline use case here is a robot that can fight. And here's the part that really made me sit up. Foundation says they've already tested the Phantom MK1 with Ukrainian forces. Ukraine has basically become the world's live testing ground for autonomous and semi-autonomous warfare. Aerial drones, small unmanned boats, compact ground vehicles.
Ukraine, they always ask for money too, man. And it's for this, and it's for this, for the robots, for war. Anyway, you can play the rest of the video.
vehicles, militaries everywhere are watching that conflict and taking notes. And now humanoids are entering that same pipeline. Because here's the thing about legs versus wheels or tracks. Legs can handle terrain that vehicles just can't. Rubble, stairs, doorways, collapsed buildings. The whole bet is that a humanoid could eventually do the jobs that currently get human soldiers killed. Now, before you assume this is some fringe startup fantasy, the US military has wanted this for a long time. DARPA, the Pentagon's mad science division, ran massive humanoid robotics contests between 2012 and 2015. And right now, the Army runs a program called X-Tech Humanoids, which literally funds the development of, quote, militarized humanoid capabilities. That's the actual language. So Foundation isn't inventing this demand out of thin air. They're just the first company aggressively targeting it. And so far, that's been a lucrative lane. We're talking government contracts worth millions of dollars. Although, let's put an asterisk on that. Because during a Fox Business segment back in April, the host was hyping up a $24 million Pentagon contract the company supposedly won, but once the details were actually examined, the picture got fuzzier. Foundation was only founded in 2024, and a few months in, they acquired a company called Boardwalk Robotics, which worked closely with the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition, IHMC, a Florida research nonprofit that's genuinely respected in the humanoid space. And when asked for contract details, Foundation pointed to 2 contracts inherited from Boardwalk and 3 that came through IHMC. So the company doesn't actually appear to have independently secured new government money on its own yet. The pedigree is real, but the a Pentagon contract framing, a bit generous. Which brings us to the Eric Trump factor. He's not just an investor here, he's the company's chief strategy advisor. And Pathak had this amazing line about him, saying people don't realize he's actually an engineer at heart, that he does a lot of milling at his home. Milling at his home. And on that same Fox segment, Eric Trump was gushing about the robots, how they fist bump you, high five you, follow your commands. Then he said bringing in AI autonomy would change industry, change military application, change hospitality, that the uses are unlimited, and direct quote, I think it's a very beautiful thing. A robot that high fives you and also potentially carries a weapon system. Beautiful is one word for it. And since we're already talking about how businesses are using AI, here...
So these AI robots, like this is what they want to replace human with, right? Like movies, like it's gonna show iRobot, shows that. And iRobot, if you pay attention to the beginning, the year of that movie where the movie that it was taking place, the year it was 2035. So that's not too far off. Excuse me. That's not too far off. I hope we ain't gonna. I hope this place, this place America Babylon Great, this place be destroyed, and y'all shot, he makes a return before that, but, and then, it just shows in that movie iRobot, it was 2035 when that movie, the movie was like, that was the set year, it was set, when it came on, in the beginning, in Chicago, and like other movies like The Terminator, The Matrix, talks about, robots and AI, Demolition Man, They Live, But I'm gonna play the rest of this video. I'm not probably gonna play all of it, just kind of play some of it and go into the scriptures, but I'm gonna play the rest of this.
Here's something useful. Most of you voted for 7 AI agents businesses are paying $3,000 to $10,000 for right now in yesterday's poll. So we're giving it away for free. It breaks down the exact agents businesses are buying, what they cost, who needs them, and how to spot the right clients. It also covers the ROI, setup fees, retainers, and what a realistic $10,000 per month client list could look like, with 0 coding required. You can grab it through the link in the video description. All right, now back to the video. Okay, but here's where we need a reality check, because there's a massive gap between the marketing and the actual state of the technology. Robert Griffin, a senior research scientist at IHMC who led a project involving Boardwalk and advised the company technically, said right now it's difficult to disentangle the current state of the art from the potential state of the art. And he said building an actual robot soldier faces challenges, spanning basically the entire field of robotics. And look, humanoids genuinely have leveled up recently. Cheaper motors, better sensors, and AI training methods that let these things do parkour and kung fu in demos. But the moment you drop them into an unfamiliar environment, everything pretty much falls apart. Perception and navigation are still huge problems. These robots have incredible balance on terrain.
See, these robots doing all that martial arts. They got them like doing martial arts and stuff like that, and that's why I was going to this, bringing this video, showing this video that, hey, the so-called Negro, Latinos, natives, the elect, the men of the Lord gonna need the spiritual power, gonna need, that power, man, to defend ourselves against this. The elect, gonna get that power, men of the Lord, we're gonna need that spiritual power, because this is what's coming, like I say, these robots come, like I say, these martial law troops and so forth, but they come about, they're gonna have this high tech technology, and you're gonna need spiritual power to, combat this, get at, to defend yourself against it. The spiritual power gonna have to come about, because like I say, your switch or AK, well, ain't gonna do it justice, or ain't gonna really do much damage, or at all against this technology or robots they're gonna put out there, in the future, but play the rest of this.
Terrain they've trained on, but new ground often requires specialized training all over again. And physical manipulation, actually grabbing and handling objects reliably, remains one of the biggest unsolved problems in the entire field. And yeah, that includes picking up a gun. Rodney Brooks, an MIT professor.
See that? See they they gave these robots, to pick up a gun, right? To shoot.
Emeritus and an absolute legend in robotics, through the coldest water on all of this. He expects it'll take more than a decade before humanoids can operate reliably in complex, unfamiliar settings. A combat robot would need to cross wildly different terrain, navigate rubble on stairs, get through blocked doors, and even once you nail...
I forgot that movie. Did it come out in 2020? I forgot what year it came out. It was called some of these robots, man. They hunt humans. I forgot the name of it, but yeah, I'll play the rest of the video.
Nail that in a lab. He says going from a solid lab demo to initial deployment in robotics is always at least 10 more years. And then there's the ethical minefield. Questions about reliability, about removing human judgment from decisions on lethal force. The whole thing conjures Terminator imagery whether you want it to or not. Pathak's response to all of that? Basically a shrug. He says the doomsday scenarios are, quote,
so like I said, they're gonna have the robots not really, have no really emotion, when, doing what they gotta do as far as, getting the job done, killing, not having no human emotional, no emotion, just, hit the target, kill, excuse me, hit the target, kill, slacking. Excuse me, what was I say? They're gonna just do what they gotta do. What they gotta do with the target. They're gonna kill it. Kill what else in front of them. They're not gonna have no emotions. They're not gonna think about it. They just gonna do it, right? Play the rest of this.
Very, very overblown for humanoids, and he's got this almost fatalistic pitch.
See, they go our robot, right?
He says, I wish I could end wars, but I don't think I can. But I can definitely contribute in making war more precise, reducing collateral damage as much as possible. Precision warfare through robots. That's the sell. Now, you might be tempted to write this all off as one company's hype cycle, but zoom out, because the global context is what makes this story stronger. Just yesterday, July 17th, in Shenzhen, China, a company called Engine AI held what they billed as the world's first free humanoid robot fighting competition. It's called the Ultimate Robot Knockout Legend, URKL.
This reminds me of that movie Real Steel. If you ever seen that movie, you know what I'm talking about.
Held at the Shenzhen Nanshan Cultural and Sports Center. 32 teams from around the world, all piloting Engine AI's standardized platform, the T-800. And yes, they actually named their fighting robot the T-800. Subtlety is dead. It stands 1.73 meters tall and can throw uppercuts, spinning kicks, and pop back up after getting knocked down. The crowd went absolutely nuts when a white robot called White Eagle landed a clean high kick to the head of its black-clad opponent, Matador. But the moment everyone's talking about, a robot got its entire head knocked off mid-fight, losing all its head-mounted sensors, and it just kept...
You know what I'm saying? That movie Real Steel, man, you know, so like, you know, it had robots, you know, boxing. And this was, you know, right here, you know, showing this, you know, they doing these mixed, like UFC, right? Mixed martial arts. You know, inside this, you know, cage, you could say. You know, or they call octagon, whatever. You know, that this, you know, like I'm saying, they trying to replace, you know, humans with robots, man. You know, this is what's ahead, man. You know.
Kept fighting, kept throwing punches, kept absorbing hits, finished the match running purely on torso-based core systems. Even Donnie Yen, the action movie star, was there, saying watching real robots fight up close was more impressive than anything he'd seen on film. And Engine AI's CEO Zhao Tongyang was very open about the purpose. The tournament validates mechanical balance, millisecond...
Moab, man, you know. Moab, man. But I say, man, hey, this is what's coming, man. You know, this is what's ahead.
Level decision-making, multimodal sensor coordination.
And a lot of people that, you know, think that, oh, it's just, you know, it's just a movie, you know, it's never gonna happen. Well, this is what they planning on to do, and this is what they planning on doing, push, you know, and get this out there.
Combat as R&D. Matches are even scored on effective strikes, stability, defense, and durability. So while America debates whether robot soldiers are ethical, China is stress testing combat robotics as public entertainment. And the manufacturing scale coming out of China is its own story. XPeng, the EV maker, is planning to push monthly production of its iron humanoid past 1,000 units by the end of this year, ahead of a global rollout in 2027. First quarter of 2027, Iron starts working as a shopping assistant in XPeng stores across China, then expands overseas. And Morgan Stanley analysts expect China's humanoid shipments to hit 50,000 units in 2026 and 100,000 next year. That's not prototype territory anymore. That's an industry. Meanwhile, this technology is already causing real-world chaos on the labor side. In Ulsan, South Korea, Hyundai's auto workers are on partial strike right now, the car industry's first factory stoppage over humanoid robots. When Hyundai unveiled its new Atlas robot in January in Las Vegas, 6'2", joints that swivel a full 360 degrees, the stock jumped 85% that month, and roughly 40,000 unionized workers collectively panicked. One union leader, Kwon Tae-kun, said he was genuinely shocked that many workers felt they'd arrived at the era of cars being built by robots instead of human hands. Atlas costs around $130,000 per unit and pays for itself in about 2 years. It lifts 110 pounds instantly.
See, like I say, they're gonna these manufacturing jobs, whatever warehouse job, they're gonna replace you people, you know, and you know, with these robots, man. Hey, they ain't playing, man.
66 pounds sustained, runs 4 hours on a battery. Hyundai plans to deploy it by 2028 at its non-unionized Georgia Meta plant. And in June, they bought out SoftBank's remaining stake in Boston Dynamics entirely. So the workers are refusing 4 hours of work a day, potentially disrupting production of 5,000 vehicles and costing Hyundai over 200 billion won, about $134 million. Their demands are unprecedented. Fixed salaries instead of hourly pay, raising retirement to 65, AI-related job guarantees, bigger bonuses. And this matters way beyond Korea. The country has the world's highest industrial robot density, over 6 times the global average. And an Oxford researcher, Carl Benedict Frey, says Hyundai is where the question of whether labor can push back against humanoids gets tested first. Tesla expects Optimus production by year's end. BMW is testing its Aeon robot in Germany. Xiaomi's running humanoids in EV plants. Mitsubishi wants mass production by early next year. And GM added dozens of cobots to its Detroit factory while laying off about 1,000 workers.
So, this is what's ahead, man. This is what's coming, man. So I'm gonna get some scriptures back this up, but just know this video is going to how just really know how they're gonna have the robots, as soldiers, for war, this gonna come about, you so-called Negro, Latino, Israelites, they're gonna, come at you with these robots, the UN troops as well, but let's say they're gonna have these robots, out there too, coming at you, Negro, Latino, Native Israelites, time of Jacob's trouble, and all hell breaking loose out here and so forth. But get the scriptures back this up. This is Luke 21:20. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is not. So Jerusalem is a people before it's a place. So the so-called Negro, Latino, Native Israelites, all the Israelites, all Jerusalem, all the Israelites, right? So-called Negro, Latino, all the Israelites, right? So when you see these, these UN troops, these robots coming through, it's not good, Like I said, there's gonna be a lot of, people dying, a lot of so-called Negro, Latino, Israelites dying, in the future, Like I said, the time of Jacob's trouble, like we in the beginning of it, but it's gonna get worse than what it is. What's going on? Because you got situation with ICE, the ICE agents, whatever, going to places where Jake at, but it's gonna get worse, right? Going to places with so-called Negro, Latino, Israelites, whether it be restaurants or whatever, right? Raiding, restaurants or whatever. But it's gonna get worse though than what's going on with that, So, that's what's ahead, man. It's gonna be some real, horrific, dangerous, bad times ahead. Here in America, Babylon Great, and for you so-called Negro, Latino, and Israelites, 2/3 you Israelites, that it's gonna be the Lord Yahweh Shah that's gonna bring that judgment down upon you. You hard-headed Israelites, and I say, Lord Yahweh Shah is gonna have mercy on the elect of the so-called Negro, Latino, and Israelites. But like I was saying earlier, men of the Lord gonna need that spiritual power to even, defend yourself against these robots. Hopefully I'm probably righteous number, but you're gonna have to have the spiritual power to defend yourself and have mercy about Lord Yahweh, get up out that situation to make a way to escape out of that situation, man. Cause like I said, these robots not gonna have no feeling. They see you as the you're the enemy, and you're the target that need to be annihilated or destroyed, whatever. They're gonna do it. Like I said, these robots not gonna have no emotion. So I'm gonna get Isaiah. Hold up. Oh, there we go. Isaiah 59:19. So it says, Isaiah 59:19. So shall they fear the name of the Lord Yahweh Bahasham Yahushua from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the spirit of the Lord Yahweh Bahasham Yahushua shall lift up a standard against him. So hey, these Edomites, so-called white people, Edomite devils, these heathens, they fear that name. They dread that name. They, it gets to them, right? That name, Yahweh, most high name, Yahweh, who y'all call God. and the son name who y'all call Jebus. The real name is Yahushua. You know, so they fit that, they fit those names, you know, and then they'll say Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. You know, and it says when the enemy shall come, let's say fear the name from the west. And what's the west? What's the western part of the world? You know, here in America, Babylon the Great, right? You know, these so-called white people, East Sodomite devils, don't like that. Don't like the names, right? Don't like that. They you know, like I say, like I say, it puts fear in them. You know, hearing that name, Yahweh Bahashem Yahushua. Excuse me. So we know when the enemy shall come in like a flood. So I say these so-called white people, Esau and my doubles. I say the UN troops, these robots gonna come in, man. They're coming like a flood, man. Gonna come in rushing, right? That's how crazy it's gonna get. You know, seeing that, man, and that's what's ahead. You know, it's gonna take a lot of people off guard, man. A lot of people not gonna be prepared, you know, in their mind or spirit of what's gonna come about. You know, when that happens. Only the elect of the so-called Negro, Latino, Native Israelite, you know, the men of the Lord, the apostles and the elders and brother Grand Millstone, you know, that teach the truth of Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai. You know, in the spirit of Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai, you know, it's gonna be, you know, protected and delivered and to get up out this situation, you know. But these robots, like I say, they're not gonna have no emotions, you know. I say that technology and so forth. I say that's gonna be on them. No gun, no like I say, no switch gun or whatever is not gonna ain't gonna do no damage to them like that, you know. You like I say, you're gonna have to have that spiritual power, man, you know. And that's why the Lord Yahweh Shai is going to lift up that standard against him. So I'm going to go to that word standard real quick, right? Player.
Strong's H 5127. Noose. Noose.
It said noose. So let me see. So the Strong's definition, noose, says to vanish away, subside, escape, chase, deliver, make to flee away, flight, hide, lift up, stand. So that's what the Lord Yahweh Shai gonna do. You know, he gonna make way for the elect of the so-called Negro, Latino, Israelites to, you know, hey, you gonna vanish. You know, you could, you know, you could disappear. You know, you could disappear out of this. You know, get up out of that situation. You know, it says chase. You know, you could, you know, you have power. You know, to, you know, chase away these, you know, these UN troops. You know, get at these robots. You know, take flight. You know. To put to flight, excuse me. Put to flight, you know, you know, toss up these robots or whatever, these UN troops, you know, with just like Hulk strength, you know, superhuman strength, as they say, you know. So that's what's gonna come. That's what's gonna be needed. That spiritual power. Yahweh Shai gonna have to, you know, if you're the elect, Yahweh Shai gonna give you that spirit, that, you know, that power to get up out that situation, you know, to escape out of that situation. However, you know, comes about with how Lord Yahweh Shai get you out of that situation, you know, so, you know, give you that power, you know, the elect of the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native Israelite men, you know, that's gonna get that, you know, that kept their faith, you know, up to that point, you know, and just kept believing Lord Yahweh Shai and didn't turn back, didn't give up, and didn't give up upon the Lord when things, got hard and rough, going through the sufferings and chastening, being in His truth and walking faith with Lord Yahweh Shai. Those men that kept the faith is gonna receive that power by Lord Yahweh Shai, and Lord Yahweh Shai gonna have mercy on the elect men of Israelites, and the elect, women and children are their number, but I'm talking about the men, that Lord Yahweh Shai is gonna have mercy on and give them that power because they kept their patience and faith and kept believing on and gonna get that power and to escape these UN troops or martial law troops or these robots that's gonna come about, come at them, come at the men of the Lord, but so yeah, I didn't want to make it too long, so hope this was edifying, Lord willing, hope this was edifying. So again, I'd like to give our praise and glory to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahushua Bahashem, Rahakakadash, to the apostle elders, to the Sisakin brothers, to the Fiakwaf sisters, to do listen, keep the faith, and Yahushua keep fighting that say Shalom.